Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wildlife Resources Division's virtual public meeting to discuss our proposed hunting regulations for the 2023 through 2025 seasons. We're going to pause just a sec and let folks jump on to Facebook Live to join us. Alrighty, my name is Tina Johannsen, and I am one of two assistant chiefs in the game management section here at the Wildlife Resources Division. And one of my jobs is to put together the proposed regulation changes every other year. Where we are in the process right now is our April public comment period, which this meeting is part of that April public comment period. If you would like to make an official comment on our proposed hunting regulations, you cannot do that in the Facebook comments. We will answer questions after I'm done with this presentation from the Facebook comments, but for an actual official public comment on the regulations that you want to have considered, you will need to send that to gm.comments@dnr.ga.gov. Don't worry, we'll show that address and we'll have it in the comments multiple times for those of you who want to send us a comment. So when we propose our regulations, we look at four major filters for those. The first one being biological. We're not going to do anything that is going to potentially endanger the wildlife resource. Most of the changes that we make really don't have a biological impact per se. Most of them are the second point where we're trying to be responsive to public desires. Whenever possible, if it's something that's not going to hurt the resource and hunters feel strongly one way or the other, we try to accommodate that any chance we get. The minor filters are we do try to keep things simple and flexible. We set the frameworks, but then obviously land managers and hunters have to be more restrictive where they need to. And then we also try to minimize any challenges to our efforts to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters. So we have a public input process in January that is not limited to agency proposed changes. We did all of those January public meetings. We did a virtual meeting, and we got over 400 suggestions from people. That part is not required by law. This part, this April comment period is, we will have this comment period open until April the 30th. We will compile all of those thoughts and input and all of the comments. Those will be presented to the board at their May meeting along with the proposed changes. So the changes that we have right now range from what we call housekeeping, which is something that's a fairly minor change to an existing rule. When you have over 100 WMAs, over a dozen federal areas, and literally hundreds of thousands of hunters that you're trying to accommodate, occasionally errors creep in. Or if we need to clarify something, those are our housekeeping changes. So for this go around, we have two examples of that. One would be that for a drawn big game quota hunt on one of our areas that we manage, a hunter may bring a non-hunting assistant afield with them to help them drag a deer or paw turkeys or otherwise show them the ropes. Those folks, of course, have to be licensed hunters, but they cannot carry a weapon. Another clarification would be that alligator hunters can sell their lawfully harvested hides if they wish to do so without having to have a fur dealer's license. We found that there was an artifact in the regulation, and we're going to clarify that, so it's actually not making any changes. It's just a housekeeping clarification. Regarding alligators, we are also going to add 100 harvest permits to the total quota, bringing that up to 1,130 total tags. Those will be distributed across our alligator zones proportionally, with the exception of Fort Stewart and Lake Eufaula, which will keep their small quotas because they're such restricted areas. And then we are adding Richmond County to the list of counties that have hit the urban mark to have that extended archery season to hopefully help them harvest more deer in those areas. While we're talking about deer, we do have some substantial changes to the deer either sex stays. We are adding days to every county with the exception of our two farthest northeastern counties. Some counties will now be, actually the majority of counties will now be either sex for the entirety of the rifle season. We do recognize that there are some areas where folks may not want to see more doe harvest, but again, we have to set those boundaries, and if you need to be more restrictive, then that's on the landowners and the hunters on that particular piece of property. Deer season in Southwest Georgia, we're making some changes down there based on some biological data collection we've been doing the last couple of years down there. The peak of the rut is a little later down there than it is in the rest of the state. And so we are proposing to make the first 2 weeks of archery season buck only to protect fawns for a little longer. We'll extend the firearm season to January 15th, which is the maximum allowed by state law. We'll also extend the archery season down there to January 31st. And this is not based on behavioral observations. If you spend any time in the deer woods, you know that bucks start chasing in September, and they may keep chasing well into January all across the state. These data come from fetuses collected from does to backdate and determine when the peak of the rut actually is down there. Switching gears a little bit to talk about bears. We're making some changes for all 3 bear zones. One is that we will now require game check harvest reporting for all 3 bear zones. Northern zone hunters will be able to take their harvested bears to participating taxidermists and meat processors to get those bears tagged now instead of having to come. We'll still have WMA offices and our offices open for that, but we're trying to make that easier on them to find somebody who's open that can tag a bear for them. Southern zone bears, just making a minor clarification there that they have to be taken to be tagged within 24 hours of harvest. And then we are changing the procedure for bear dog training on Chattahoochee National Forest to allow an online option. Central Georgia Bear Zone is going to hopefully get an additional day added to their 1-day season. We had a population viability analysis done by the University of Georgia a few years ago that found that annual mortality above 11 adult females would result in a population decline over time. And that's all mortality, including hunting. So we would like to offer that extra day of opportunity, but we have set a bar on that it's only if less than 6 females are killed on the first day. The first day will still be the second Saturday in December, like it is now. It will be private land only, like it is now. And if fewer than 6 females are harvested, then we will add that second day. That will allow us to offer more opportunity without potentially over-harvesting our females. Public land changes, not a lot of big changes there, mostly fairly minor stuff. One is a clarification that centerfire rifles may not be used for small game, including fur bearers on WMAs, and that coyotes and hogs cannot be hunted at night with centerfire rifles. And this is purely a safety concern. And then for our state parks, those of you who hunt state park hunts, we're adjusting the verbiage there so that the mandatory pre-hunt meeting handled online or via email at the park's discretion. We know we have repeat hunters that have been to the mandatory meeting, and we don't want having to attend that meeting the night before the hunt starts to be a barrier for people. Some other WMA amendments, we've adjusted hunts on 46 WMAs. Most of those are calendar shifts, trying to make sure that we're not running into a holiday or something like that. We've increased opportunity where we can. We've expanded deer archery on BF Grant, Cedar Creek, Gaither, Okie Woods, Perry Dovefield, and the south end of Sapelo Island. We've had several requests from archery hunters to expand their opportunity, and where we can do that, we have done so. One minor restrictive change, we are going to allow rabbit hunting only 3 days a week on Die Lane. We just wrapped up an extensive research project there to assess the impacts of rabbit hunting on quail survival. And as it turns out, having dogs running on the area every single day during the hunting season is detrimental to quail survival. So that's it in a nutshell. All of this information is available in detail on our website, and you can make your comments through the GM comments email. We will be accepting those through April 30th. Those are specific to the regulations that you will find on our website if you want to read those in more detail. And of course, you can call us or you can write us a letter. If you have questions, you can send those. I read all of the emails, and if I don't know the answer to a question, then I'll flip it to someone who does. And so with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time this evening, and we'll take some questions. We're gonna wait another minute, let the questions come in.
Hunting allowed on Sundays on WMA land?
Yes, hunting is allowed on Sundays on our WMAs unless there's a quota hunt where the WMA is otherwise closed. But unlike some states, we do not have closure on Sundays.
Why doesn't DNR let WMAs be more open to hunting deer instead of having quota hunts?
That's a great question. So we would love it if we could have all of our WMAs open for the full statewide season. That would be a lot easier on us. But unfortunately, some of our WMAs, because of their proximity to areas with high populations, or because it's a small WMA, or a whole host of other reasons, if we have the potential for overcrowding, then we have to quota the hunt. And so the unfortunate reality is the closer an area is to Atlanta, the more likely it is to have to be quoted. And we do that for a couple of different reasons. We put quotas in place to preserve the deer herd. We don't want to hunt that herd until it's basically got no deer or it's hard to see a deer. That's obviously the first consideration. It's also safety of hunters. When folks get crowded, more accidents happen. We don't want to see that happen. So in order to preserve the quality of the hunt, the quality of the herd, and to make sure everybody stays safe, some of our areas have to be put under a quota. We assess those regularly. Anytime we feel like we can increase a quota or even remove one, we do and will. But a lot of our areas do need a quota to maintain those hunts.
Coyote hunting on WMAs, when is that allowed?
Great question, because the issue with coyotes and with hogs can be a little confusing when it comes to our WMAs. So coyotes and hogs are what we consider invasive, non-native, exotic species. They are not game animals. As much fun as they can be to hunt, we are not managing our WMAs for those two species. So we allow you to shoot those two animals as incidental take anytime you're hunting. So whatever weapon is lawful at the time for the game species in season can be used to take hogs and coyotes. That's why if small game season is the only season open, those are the only weapons that you can use to hunt coyotes and hogs, or to, I should say, to take coyotes and hogs on those areas. And so the main goal there is we don't want people using centerfire rifles if it's not a centerfire rifle season where people are required to wear hunter orange and there's an expectation that those weapons are being used at the time. We do quite a bit of trapping for hogs in particular, and so hunting hogs doesn't always jive with trapping. With coyotes, obviously hunting at night is a great activity for people who enjoy predator hunting. Can be a little dicey when you're talking about public land where you don't necessarily know who else is out there with you. And so we've got safety considerations, and we've got considerations relative to what else is being hunted on the area that we have to take into account. And so if you look at the area specific regulations in our hunting guide, it will usually tell you when and where you can hunt coyotes. But if you're ever in doubt, call that region office and somebody on the phone will be happy to help you figure out what can and can't be taken. But as a general rule, if you're out there hunting something, we're happy for you to take any coyotes or hogs that you happen to encounter.
Why is January 15th the latest date that firearms season can go by state law?
Because that's what's in state law. I don't know when that law came into existence. It's been that way as long as I've been here. The legislature sets the earliest day that we can open a season, and they set the latest date that we can run a season until. If I had to guess, it probably has to do with the fact that bucks start shedding their antlers in January. So that's a biological concern that we have. We try to offer as much antlerless harvest as we can, but obviously folks don't want to be taking those shed bucks. So that would be my guess as to why that cutoff is there, but there's a biological reason for that.
Why are not all WMAs not quota for turkey? Or how are they determined that they don't have to have a quota?
So why aren't all of our WMAs quota for turkey? Basically because not all of our areas get the same amount of pressure during turkey season, and all of our areas don't have the same number of turkeys. So each area is assessed by the staff who work in that region and who cover that WMA. And they take into consideration things like the terrain, how many people hunt the area, where the turkey's distributed across that landscape, what's the turkey population look like. And then that's kind of where you start getting into the art of wildlife management, right? So you look at things like hunting pressure, access, and number of birds, and then finessed, okay, how much do we want to increase or decrease harvests? So any area that, again, can be open for statewide season, that's our desire. We would love to have everything open under statewide season. But if an area starts to show some declines in the turkey numbers, or if it's close to Atlanta or another population center where we see on opening weekend, a lot of times you'll see it's just the opening weekend that's quoted. That's because there's so much pressure that opening weekend that we have to quota it. But then after that, the pressure drops down and we're able to open it up further. So it again just goes back to, we'd love to have it open, but we can't always, and then those quotas are determined by the local on-site staff.
My son is 13 and hasn't gotten his license yet. Does he have to be in the stand with me or just within a distance that I could get his attention if needed?
That's they can't hunt alone because they haven't had, right, they haven't had hunter education yet, so they can't hunt alone. You need to be physically together when you're hunting. It's not worded this way in our regulations, but a really good rule of thumb is the idea is that you as the adult need to be in a position to take immediate control of their firearm or their archery equipment if the need arises. And you can't really do that from the other side of a food plot or something like that. If a game warden rolls up and you're sitting at the truck watching your son 100 yards away on the edge of a food plot hunting, that's not going to work. You need to be pretty close to each other. Alrighty, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Please send your comments. GM comments at dnr.ga.gov is me, and be happy to hear from all of you. And have a great evening.